pawn on the edge of the board. He said, no, I'm going to play on the other flank. Rook takes pawn, sacrificing the rook. And
Where's Levy?
Where's Levy? Where's Levy? But in the meantime, he's hitting this rook. When the rook moves, he's simply going to slide back with his knight, I believe, and he's banking on the power of this passed pawn, which is going to drive itself forward. This knight is untouchable, just as strong as any rook. And the one downside is that there's a potential open line against the black king this time. Watch out for the white rook to swing across, defend its queen, and maybe infiltrate. But this one, suddenly it's anyone's game. Magnus taking a massive risk.
But he starts with a check. We've got some moves on the board. So he doesn't fall back with the knight. He first slides the queen over. And white hasn't decided where to move the king. And I think your move to follow, David. That knight will fall back to the central square.
Yeah.
But you're right. What a risk to take.
Yeah, Magnus wants it. He's up 2 minutes nearly on the clock, Magnus Carlsen. So he should still be a bit of a favorite in this game. But Hikaru at least has something to hold on to. He's got a material advantage. And if the queens come off, Hikaru might well win this game. And
he gives it back.
Wow.
Now we're moving quick.
I think that's very professional of Hikaru. He gets rid of the knight. But what about this endgame? You're going to be down a pawn.
Yeah, he's down a pawn, Hikaru. If the queens come off and Magnus takes back this pawn on the edge of the board, it's going to be 4 versus 3 in terms of pawns. Magnus is going to be up 1. But rook endgames have a drawish reputation. The white king as well will happily sit in front of this pawn we said was so strong in the center of the board. I think that will be a draw. So if Magnus wants to win, he might well keep the queens on. Just because the black king is safe, the white king is not safe. And there we go. He does decide on that. Wow, this is still anyone's game. But I'm going to say Magnus. We talked about his queen endgame prowess. He's going to be trying to use it. Queen's always in the center of the board, Tanya.
It lands right there. Do you think Hikaru rushed with giving back the material in that moment, and now it's again him who's under big pressure?
I think he's just stuck in that drawing mindset.
Yeah.
He just wants to draw. Like, even if it gets crazy, he's like, no, safety. Just let's try and make things as simple as possible.
Right. A bit of a heart rate skip there for a moment, as it looked like maybe a blunder on the board. But no, that pawn will be picked up along with the check. Queen, or king rather, moves over to safety, tucking over to the left-hand side of the board. We're even in our pawn count. However, those white pawns are very far apart from each other. Going to be tough to keep them all defended.
There's material balance, but that central pawn that Magnus has is a very strong pawn. And, you know, it can start moving, advancing, march up the board already. 2 squares away from queening, tie down white's heavy forces into defending it. Yes, material balance, but far from a draw.
Still far from a draw. Magnus somehow needs to get his rook in. He needs to get it somehow to the second rank. The problem is, if you ever move that rook, you will drop your central pawn. Watch out, it's a trap. Don't take this pawn yet, because the black queen will come down with a nasty check, and the white rook would drop and fall on that square. So Magnus trying to get in. I'm expecting Hikaru at some point to try and build a blockade, just put his rook in front of this pawn. Right now, though, Magnus has his eyes on that white king, Hikaru's king, which is still a bit airy, still a bit open.
Yeah.
And yes, you want to put your rook in front of the pawn, but then you're also leaving empty the first rank for the queen to infiltrate into. So it's just not easy to get the setup that you want. Meanwhile, Hikaru tries to get his king closer to the defense of the center. Magnus with a rook lift, bringing the rook into the attack.
Yeah, he sidesteps that pin that you were talking about, right, David? Or preemptively sidesteps what could be a nasty pin with the pawn push, but Magnus elects to bring the rook into the game.
Bring the queen in.
Slide over for a check here, or the queen can now infiltrate to the back rank. There it is.
Big check coming in. That would be game over.
Hikaru needs to stop this check. He needs to push his pawn forward, otherwise he is done. Every move loses here, apart from pushing this pawn forward. I think it's the most obvious move.
I was going to say, do you think it's hard to find?
I think he's going to find it.
It's the most human move.
Yeah, process of elimination. You just can't allow a check followed by another check. And what's the black queen coming in behind once the black rook assists? He needs to push this pawn forward, but then the rook is coming this way.
He does it.
There it is. There only was one option, and he does manage to find it, defending his king at the same time as threatening that rook.
But he'd have to find another big move if Magnus slides all the way to where David's pointing out. That rook cannot be allowed to enter the second rank. That would be game over. And it's not an easy move to respond to, because you can't slide your king back from where it came from. The queen joins the party as well on that flank rank.
I feel like the king would have to march up the c-file one step and then over diagonally to the right, almost right towards the center of the board, and also putting yourself in position to maybe eventually pick up that isolated black pawn.
Oh, brave, James, brave. I like it though. King marches, king of the hill, king in the center.
Whoa, was he reaching out for that central pawn? Is Hikaru about to pick it up?
He's gonna
Did you
take
see
it.
that?
He can take this pawn with his queen and then march the king forward, vacating a safe square. Everything's protected, but it's hanging by a thread.
David, he was about to do it, and then he pulled back.
Oh, he doesn't have much time. Hikaru down to his last 25 seconds. He takes it with a rook.
Okay.
He takes that pawn with the rook. Now some checks. The eval bar drops.
Whoa!
Oh, wait,
no.
what?
Gives a check.
Oh, okay.
Oh, the move was completed. Now the king has gone on a journey. It had to go this way. If it had stepped towards the center, the white queen would have been skewered, pinned to the king. Where is the killer blow? Can Magnus end this now? Oh, he pushes his pawn forward. That is a threat. The black queen threatening to come back with a checkmate. Hikaru missed this one. A quiet move.
But you defend it, right? With your own queen. That's a checkmate in one. You can bring your queen either forward one step or diagonally next to the king and stop the threat. I would be very tempted to put it on d4, the central square.
He needs to move his queen to defend.
Or offer a trade.
He steps forward.
Goes to that central square that you liked.
I like it. Why is this so bad for Hikaru?
Yeah, where is this essentially decisive victory here for Magnus?
Wow. According to the computer, the best move for Magnus is to just take a chill, to just do nothing, improve the black king. Given an opportunity, Hikaru might counterattack against Magnus's king now. There might be some checks, some miracle saves here. So just taking a timeout, improving the black king, and saying to Hikaru, you're tied up. That was the best. Magnus doesn't find it. He still finds a good move. But what's
That's a very
next?
natural check. And I think, David, if he comes up with the king, that's when Magnus wants to step up. Take away some running squares from that white king. But is Hikaru going to fall back, or will he move forward with the king? The first big question he has to answer in seconds.
Feels most natural to drop back to that dark square that you're highlighting.
Yeah, he's going to move it across, but he's under 15 seconds now, Hikaru Nakamura.
Got to make a move, got to make a decision,
Time
Hikaru.
ticking down to 5 seconds here. You can see the pressure running through the calculations. Has to make a move. Will manage to do so just as the time ticks towards the end. Gains 10 seconds on his clock, and he does drop back. Still a very precarious position here for Hikaru. Again, like he said, he was just hoping to not drop the game. That was his goal for the final 2 rounds of the day, and now he's staring down the barrel of a loss against Magnus Carlsen.
And the black queen and rook so dangerously placed against Hikaru's king. And the most important factor, David, Magnus's king absolutely safe. No counterplay against.
Yep, super safe. He is 1 pawn down temporarily, Magnus, but he can go and regain that pawn if he wants at will. Still, that white king hiding in no man's land there. It just looks so terrifying. Magnus actually repeats the position.
Whoa, no. He's not going to repeat it again. That's it. Magnus doesn't draw this. He will not give that check.
Yeah, that's why we brought it up earlier, right? We said, you know, Hikaru here, happy to play for a draw, but we would be mighty surprised if Magnus played for one as well. But he's considering it, and he as well, only 30 seconds on the clock to find an answer.
He's not going to repeat.
This should never happen. Magnus actually moves his king forward. A great decision in the end. The king is safer there. There was no reason to bail out with a draw. Magnus is risking nothing here. Even a queen trade, a rook endgame is a dead draw. So Magnus plays on. Hikaru now having to defend every move. It's like an only move for Hikaru.
Yeah.
But he's walking that tightrope. He's surviving at the moment. And watch out, there is a threat, Hikaru, for the first time in this game. The white queen trying to come up and deliver a check to Magnus's king.
Yeah. That's a big threat, actually, that you need to take care of. And Magnus gives a check, forcing Hikaru's king towards the center of the board.
Wow. How is the king surviving like this? It's so crazy.
Against the majors.
Oh. There we go, threatening the queen now. Queen's going to have to fall back.
Yeah. She's going to have to be careful where she steps, though. If she steps 1 square back, she will get pinned and captured on the next move. So she steps across the board.
And yes, I see the evaluation bar. It's just declaring Magnus is completely winning. But I have to see, I don't see the knockout sequence here. White's king looks relatively safe. Where's the other check coming from? Is there a finish on the spot?
There's an extra check.
You could pick up the pawn with a check as well.
You start repeating again. You just offer another repetition, bring the white king back.
Yeah, the white king stepping back is most likely about to happen, although the rook can give a check. in the near future, and this pawn in the center might drop. There's potential skewers in the near future if you're not careful. Magnus, he smells blood. He's getting closer and closer, but the heart rate as well going up. It shows he's nervous. He really wants it. He's normally at 70, 80, Magnus. He's up at 120 this time.
This could be the highest I've seen his heart rate.
Yeah, I mean, a reminder that this day did not start the way that either of these players wanted it to, right? And so they have been showing a lot of fight in the more recent rounds just to claw themselves into the positions that they currently stand. But, you know, they're not satisfied, especially Magnus Carlsen, never satisfied unless he's owning the top spot. And if he smells blood in the water, then he's going to go searching for it.
And we said this in the show open, right? Anything less than a tournament victory, than a slam victory, would not be good enough for Magnus. It would be a disaster for him. That's all he wants. I think he simply wants to, right now at least, pick up that central pawn next with the rook, and then start threatening the white king.
Okay, so he does give it away. I was wondering if he would slide the rook over in defense of the king.
Notice how he doesn't trade any pieces. He just wants to continue attacking the white king.
And he's driven the white queen to the edge of the board. She's offside, so she cannot block any checks. Now the black queen is going to slide back. Actually, can give several different checks here. They all look equally strong. The white king surely doomed now. Nothing around to block any checks. Black rook slides.
Magnus at almost 130 heart rate. But I think he's calculated.
There it is.
Checkmate
What
to
an
follow.
intense
What a game.
matchup between Hikaru Nakamura and Magnus Carlsen. Magnus Carlsen does maneuver his way to a victory. For Hikaru, that's going to sting, particularly considering what